Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. So if everybody please stand, Sonia can lead us in invocation and our pledge.
Great, thank you so much. It's been our tradition to say a prayer before our meeting. If you choose to pray this, please bow your heads. Thank you, Father, for our community of caring parents and teachers. Please bless our children, constables, and our teachers, and provide us wisdom as we make decisions here tonight. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. We got a thin crowd tonight.
It's for a reason, though.
That's true.
For a reason.
That's true, for a good reason. I
For a
think.
good reason, and it's not lost on all the directors that are here tonight.
Y'all not too lonely, are
But October is national, across the country, Principals Month. And so in recognition of that, we kind of get the ultimate thanks. We gave them the entire night off. In the past, we've had them be here and dismiss them. Tonight, they didn't even have to show up here at all. They did their in-service today without kids and with teachers and went home. And so the board has asked me, though, to research to find out if there's not a National Directors Day, what month would we celebrate that in Magnolia ISD? So I'll have to do a little research on that and find out, so the directors might find something.
And we also said we're not gonna show up in the board month either. That went over like a lead balloon. All right, sir, that's,
I'm
you're
up
done?
now, right? We've got presentations right now, so I think the very first one we have is Dr.
Well,
Anita.
but, we're gonna go through the,
We don't have any speakers. Oh, we do have a speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, two. Go right ahead. I'm kind of usurping part of that show.
okay, so, we've got one for audience participation, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Our favorite audience participant. And I'm gonna go ahead and read this, Stacy, while you're coming up here.
Oh, okay, great.
As the Magnolia ISD Board of Trustees and set forth in the Texas Education Code, we are here to set goals, adopt policy, adopt budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and communicate the district's vision for success to the community. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent, who the board collaborates with to ensure our goals are reached. This is a meeting of the public. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. School board meetings are open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. Audience participation is limited to the public comment portion of the meeting. Any person disrupting the meeting will be asked to leave. Participants must have turned in a form 15 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. Participation is limited to 3 minutes. Any complaint or charge brought against an employee by name opposition for which resolution has not been sought in accordance with policy should be pursued through the district's grievance policy. Please note that the Board of Trustees shall not deliberate, respond, or make decisions regarding any subject that is not included on the agenda that's posted. So with that, welcome back.
Thank you. I want to read to you a poem that means a lot to our family, and it's about having special needs children. Some of you may know, some of you may not. Our son Josiah was born and died today 9 years ago. We knew before he was born that he had Down syndrome. And so a friend of ours had given us this poem, and we had read it, and we read it at his memorial service as well. Welcome to Holland, written by Emily Pearl Kingsley. And I need to say that some special needs parents disagree with this poem and take issue with it, but I feel like it sums up our experience of anticipating having a special needs child. And just a reminder that when you deal with special needs children, you also deal with the experience that their parents have had this child's whole life. I'm often asked to describe the experience of raising a child with a disability, to try to help people who have not shared this unique experience to understand it, to imagine how it would feel. It's like this. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and you make a wonderful plan. The Colosseum, the Michelangelo David, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The stewardess comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you say? What do you mean Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plan. They've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to some horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence, famine, and disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy a new guidebook, and you must learn a whole new language. And you will meet a whole new group of people you would never have met. It's just a different place. It's a slower place than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there a while and you catch your breath, you look around and you begin to notice that Holland has windmills. Holland has tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy, and they're all bragging about what a wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned. The pain of that will never, ever go away, because the loss of that dream is a very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to go to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland.
That was awesome, thank you. Okay, sir.
Superintendent report now, and we're gonna ask Dr. Hebert if she would give us an update on this year's accountability and sort of, all things that go with that this year.
It's up, but I can't see it yet, so shall I talk kind of free for a while? There we go. Okay. You know, each year, around this time, the state releases accountability information for us to look, and, you know, the intent of that is for the community. There we go. The intent of that is for the community to learn more about their school district, to be able to stay involved and know the progress of their school district. And so this year is no different. Maybe it's a lot different because it is the first year that our campuses have been rated under the A through F accountability rating system. So that gives us a unique, different kind of look at some of the same information. So I want to take you through that a little bit and what that looks like for our district and what things that we're doing as a result of that to work for continuous improvement, just as we have every year. And so the first thing to know is how the state sets up the actual ratings for grades that are given. And you'll see this is how they define them, that if you get an A, that's exemplary performance. B is recognized, C is acceptable, D is in need of improvement, and F would be unacceptable performance. And for the D and F categories, they have particular activities that they expect districts or campuses to do in relation to those grades. So I want to take a look at Magnolia ISD, and the first thing to look at is Magnolia ISD did earn a B in the accountability grading system with an actual number grade of 87. Now, I wanted to show you this chart particularly because I feel like it is important toward understanding the complexity of putting together this grade and trying to get district performance down to a one number or letter grade. And they've tried to do some different things to build a system that wasn't just dependent on one thing. And so they have what they call 3 domains. The first domain is student achievement. In student achievement for the district level and for high school levels, there are 3 different parts.
There's the STAR component, and that's 40% is based on STAR testing. Then there's the component called CCMR, and those are the college and career or military readiness skills in which students have taken a dual credit course, they've taken AP exams and passed them, they've been a part of college level work, or they've taken a college prep classes in college prep English and math, or they've earned an industry certification that makes them ready to go on into the workforce, or they actually have enlisted in the military. So we keep track of those, and there's some link-ups with College Board and the ways that they can get SAT scores and AP scores, and all of those things are put together to show that if our kids have earned that, at least one of those credentials in their high school career, that's 20% of that score. And then the graduation rate is another 20% of that score. And those three combine, I'm sorry, the second one, CCMR is 40%. So it has to add up to 100, right? So those three components go together to make the score. So you'll notice they're then given a raw score. And that's just based on how they calculate that component. It comes up to a raw number. That raw number is then put on a scale that's developed for the district, and each number is scaled and gets a grade on the scale for that one. Those are then actually, the weights are applied to each number, and once those are added up, that comes to the actual scale score at the top. However, there is one caveat even to that complicated calculation. If any school in the district received a D in that domain, even if the district earned, and that actual calculation came up to be 95. The rule in the accountability system is that you cannot get the 95. The highest grade you can get if you have a D in any school is an 89 in that actual domain. And so I think that's important to note that here you see the calculation is very close there, but the grade actually is 89 that can be there for student achievement. The second domain is school progress. There are two parts to that. One is actually academic growth. And I'm trying to not go too quickly so you can hang with me. Academic growth is measured from when they compare last year to this year, and they're expecting every, like a run's on a ladder. Every student should move up one rung every year. So even if you were a little behind last year, as long as you move up to about the same place behind this year and you keep moving or make more progress, you get extra points for more progress, you get points in the system. If you slip backwards, you move forward but you don't make a whole rung's progress, then you don't get points. That student doesn't receive points in the system. So then all those points are pooled, half points, full points, extra points, are all put together and come up with a raw score, and then are put on the scale. Then finally, the next one is relative performance. And if you'll remember a few years ago when they first put that out, that's that scatter plot that shows your performance in student STAR performance in relation to low socioeconomic status. And remember, it was kind of a regress, it had a line of regression and looking for people who were outperforming those lines. And you'll see in relative performance, particularly that's one that our district did very well, that we earned an A actually in relation to other school districts that are like us, and outperformed there. But you know, when you're put into the big mix, it doesn't always look the same. But both of those are scaled, and you'll see that's where we got a 91 to get for the actual domain school progress score. They picked the top two, the top one of the two, 91 or 73. 91 is the top, But remember the special rule, that can't be the grade for a domain, because we had a campus that had a D in that domain. So the highest that we can get is an 89 there. Is everybody kind of with that? And then finally, we have the closing the gaps domain. And this one is directly related to the federal accountability system. And the federal accountability system requires us to look at all of the subgroups and make sure that we're not leaving any particular subgroups behind. And so they've set targets, the state has set targets for each particular ethnic subgroup or socioeconomic, special education, English language learners. Every group has a target to meet. And based on those targets, you get yeses or nos, and then you get points for how many yeses or nos are there on the chart. And so one of the domains, one of the areas on that chart is academic achievement, and that counts as 50%. And that's both achievement and growth. They count the growth measure in that one as well. The graduation rate is counted. There's a target of 90. There's a special caveat on the graduation rate that if you're above 90, you have to get higher than you got last year, or you get no points. And since, as you see, our graduation rate is already very, very high, but we had an area that slipped a little, we got 0 points there. All right, maybe it went backwards even just a 1/10 of a point in an area, but it actually gave us no points even though we have an excellent graduation rate. So the third domain is English language proficiency and how our kids are moving along with their language acquisition, and you'll see that we got all of the points there. And then we also got all the points allowed for making sure that our kids are ready for post-secondary with CCMR. So that did the same magic with the scale, and those points were added up according to the weights, and that grade became an 82. So then all of that moves over to the other side of the chart, where you will see the overall grade, how that's put together. There are 3 actual scores there, domain 1, or then remember the best of domain 2 or 3. They let you pick the best one. Whichever of those is the best, and as you see, we had an 89 in both domain 1 and domain 2, so 89 is the score that goes there with a weight of 70%. And then domain 3 scale score has to do with that closing the gaps and pushing that federal accountability in at a 30% rate. And so then those 2 scores are added together to make that final number of 87. I'm going to just pause a moment. So when we start to study which way to go at this for improvement, sometimes that really takes a lot of digging down in the weeds to find which areas not only can we improve, certainly we can find those, but which ones leverage the most points and get most on the actual scale scale. Because the scale score is the thing that actually provides the score. So, any questions about that in particular, Mr. Blizzard?
Go ahead, Gary.
A couple of them. The academic growth being a 67 or 73, being a C, and then, I just lost her.
I went to sleep.
And then the other one was a 54 for, what was that?
I'll be right back. After we look at.
I don't know the rest, I just know to move the mouse. That's it.
This is somewhat
There's
cruel,
a
and
flaw
not
in the
y'all had to
system.
come to work and they didn't. Let's put a visa up there and let you look. There you
There we go. Academic achievement.
Okay, so the 54 for academic achievement, I couldn't remember what it was called there, what that category was. So what were the two, from those 2 categories, what drove us to those 2 spots? Because those seem to have, aside from the rule you mentioned,
Uh-huh.
the 89 thing,
Right.
those seem to have hurt us the most in their little calculation here? What two, from those two categories, what got us
Well,
there?
the academic growth is part of both of those categories. So that area specifically is the area that pulled that other number down as far as the actual points go. It's derived from two things: the number of kids that get approaches, meets, and masters. Or, well, no, on that part, I'm sorry, there's several areas. The number of kids who get meets performance, remember that final level performance, not the gate up first number. That's the original passing standard that's pretty high for kids on that test. It's the number of kids that get that in relation to the targets. They set a target for all students, for Hispanic students, for economically disadvantaged students. And that's about if you meet those targets. And growth is also part of that calculation. And if they're not meeting the growth and getting that full year's growth that they need, then they don't get enough points. And so that one is one that we certainly know is one of our areas of growth for our district, is to make sure our kids are getting that meets performance and getting that full year's growth. Typically, if they get the meets performance, they're going to count as a growth student.
But this is all about the STAR test, still.
This is about the STAR test. That
I mean, there's
portion of it
Academic
is,
growth has nothing to do with anything other than the STAR
it
test.
is strictly on the STAR test.
The first
and-
two domains and the first category of the third domain are all on the one-day STAR test.
Mhm. Completely, and yes, and then it's based on the scale and all of that, how the points are derived and how that goes.
It's just how we compare the numbers differently, but it's still based on that,
STAR test.
that STAR test.
Well, so academic achievement, so why do we get a 54 there?
Based on how the points add up, for those meeting the targets, a rough way to think of that is we got about 50% of the targets that were there, and that's primarily, we got more on the student achievement end, but fewer on the growth. And so that's part of what made up that. I can show you the very
You
detailed.
know, we used to sort of look at a bar, you got above the bar or you're below the bar. And there's a different way now sort of looking at, there are sort of 3 tiers now where kids sort of score and reach proficiency based on that score. You kind of approach the standards, you're at the standards, or you exceed it. And based on that, there's point levels they get for each one of those. And if the kid is not moving from where he was on one of those priorities, enough of them, we don't generate enough points to move up. But when you just total the total amount of points or how many kids reach that
The actual targets.
target level, it's a different way of looking at it than when we have to look at each individual kids and how far they moved in their specific
For
target.
instance, they say Hispanic students should have reached, that 55% of Hispanic students should have reached that meets level performance. Well, if we come in at 54, we gotta know, we didn't reach the target,
Well, now, they used to have 5 domains, now there's 3.
right?
So I thought that the whole point of having different domains was to have, to look at things other than the STAR, when it sounds like the STAR is driving this whole thing, we're just putting lipstick on it.
The STAR, for the district, having the CCMR and the graduation rate, except that it didn't count for us in that third domain, having those things is a way to look at it and give some extra points in some other things that we're doing well. But for K through 8 campuses, the grades that they received are solely based on STAR. They don't have any other components there except the ones that you see that are related to the STAR test.
So I gotta ask the loaded question of, I'm sure this probably doesn't all get weighted the same as you go through our schools, like the high schools, the junior highs, because some of this doesn't apply, to your point. Hopefully elementary kids aren't ready for the military. But is it, I mean, is there any rhyme to the reason of how this thing lays out as you look at our elementary schools versus our junior highs versus our high schools?
Well, you can certainly make the case that the elementaries are held to a higher standard according to the weights on the scale. Because when you can put in the same score for all of, like, the STAR component for the junior high, which would be the average of all those approaches, meets, and masters groups. And you put that in the scale score, and you can have the same number there. It can be a 60, and you put it in for both groups, and you'll come out often with a different number, because the elementary is held often to a higher standard.
So the elementary.
So theirs will be
less.
lower, right, and get fewer points in the system than the junior high, and the high schools is a little bit more friendly as well.
Wow. So the other question is, wasn't it one of the government officials that I won't name considers a C to be average? Is that part of why the weighting and stuff is the way it is the goal is to make the C the?
Well, I don't think so. That's not been the result, and I have a slide
Okay.
ahead to show. I think they're looking more toward the B as,
All right.
if you're looking at the curve, they're not looking to cause districts to be failure, but look at just some that are on the lower end to land in those lower categories. I'd say it's more on the B.
Okay, because I think most parents don't consider a C.
Most
When the
don't,
government
you're
made
right.
that comment, I was like, well, maybe that's what your parents considered to be a good grade, but none of the parents I know, it wouldn't fly in my house, I'll put it that way, so.
Right.
But the game is to do better than everybody else and do better than last year.
Yes, that's part of it, yes. Certainly, it's each student doing as well or better than he did last year. And that's something that we've really studied as a group together this year, how we look at all of the tests that we give, and are we reaching those levels of performance in a general way to be able to keep a measure, is the kid on track to be making that kind of performance, that we get him a full grade.
Have they said they're gonna keep the weighting more than 1 year, or is it a bouncing, is it gonna change on you?
This is the set system, and
Okay.
we don't see anything changing. That was one of the commitments that the commissioner made to us, that we would get a system and we would get the rules. And now that we know the rules, and we've dug through and understand even more of the nuances now that we have real data and real kids lining up to those numbers, we have a lot more information for how to work within the system. And as far as I understand it, it is here to stay. The only change that I see that would be significant is in 2023, I believe all those targets go up. That are on the Closing the Gaps chart, they will increase the targets and then increase them again in 2028, is the long-range plan for any changes. But otherwise, these are the rules that we're supposed to be playing by. This is a baseline year, so we're working to learn from it and move ahead.
Is any of this actually teaching us how to teach our children better, or are we just chasing this test?
Not sure I see that in the chart.
And I'm really not being sarcastic,
No.
I'm that,
It does push us to seek what is that higher performance level meets performance, and not just focus on, as Dr. Stevens said, we used to have a baseline, get everybody over the line, we're good. Now we're having to understand the nuances of every level, what it takes to get a child to that level of mastery, that they can accomplish harder questions and do them in a competent, independent way that we can predict that they're gonna do well on the test. Because it is pretty high stakes test when you look at the whole community derives a grade from what each child does in relation to his last year's performance.
And it's higher than before,
sure.
because these domains rely on that test more than they did before. There's fewer domains and they rely more on it than before, if I'm not mistaken.
When you look at a number like an academic achievement, do you look at that number and say, okay, that is something our district needs to do better? And I don't just mean to do better so our test looks better. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, is that something we need to do better to help those kids and us do a better job?
Yes and no. To see a 54 has no meaning all by itself. You have to actually go to the chart and find, because there's several, you could have a whole area that's really doing well, and another area is what hold the numbers down. You have to really go study the nuance to see which areas are not performing, and it does give us that chart and that information. and challenges us to keep moving forward. It does do that. Does the number itself, I can tell you, the one that's easiest for me to see is the star component number is a 52, and I know the way to get an A, that number needs to be a 60. If we wanted an A, just like in a junior high on star achievement, I need that number to be 60. That's an average, it's easy to understand. The other numbers are mystery numbers on the chart. They just become numbers when they get on the scale that the state's provided. You have to really be able to work with the calculations and formulas that they put together to have a lot of sense with those numbers.
I would say the principals aren't here, and the directors may, but I do think there were quite a few ahas this year as they studied their data and the results of individual kids and groups of kids as it translated to these numbers in the system. And I think there were some epiphanies of sort of, okay, we sort of get how that, the cumulative effect of these sort of things work. And I mean, I think they understand the system a little better. That's probably not exactly what you want to hear in this, because in the bottom line analysis, we're still about quality instruction, but we really needed to understand the game in some other ways and to figure out some of the places we had to polish and work on specifically to make some of these numbers move. And I know in my evaluations with the principals, I heard that sort of over again. There's some things that shined a light on it, and we've come away with a better understanding of where we have to go make some gains within the system to make it move. And so,
particularly growth, I think, is the thing that they have a much stronger understanding of what it takes to get those points. Because there are districts that don't focus on the top number on student achievement. They focus on every student, even their special education students, getting those growth points. They may not ever pass the test, but as long as they keep moving forward and catching up and keeping moving through, then they will get the points that are needed. And so it's possible to get 100% in growth, but still not have an A in student achievement yet. And so that was something that they didn't have a clear understanding of the point, because we've been in the old system for so long. They felt like they knew, just get this, get a higher percentage over the line. But then by leaving kids who didn't, just because they didn't get over a certain passing line, they could have earned points by being sure that they went forward as far as the growth went.
Two questions on the academic growth. The kids can have growth, but not have enough growth, and then you
Yes.
don't get the points for it.
For instance, meets performance is that final level passing standard, or even master's level performance.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you get masters and you stay masters, you get all the points. But if you get
Okay.
meets, and you even stay in the meets category, but you don't get as far in as you were last year,
Yeah.
you only get half a point.
I think that was my next question. You probably answered it, but if you have a high achieving kid who gets, I mean, I'm just hypothetically gets a 91, 92 this year, or 93 last year on the
Right.
test, and this year they get a 91. Do they get penalized for that?
Not as long as they stay in the same category.
Gotcha.
But if they were 91 and that was masters and they dropped to 88 and that's back in the meets category range of scores, they would get no points, even though they did very well on the
Right, and
test.
that was my question.
And that's kind of the nuance that the principals needed to understand. So now they're tracking and watching kids on an individual level and making sure each one, and that is one of the intents, is that we really don't leave anybody behind. Because when you only went for a 90% passing percentage, there's a 10% that got left behind. That was okay because we got 90. And so this system really makes you focus on individual kids reaching, I don't know, it's their potential, reaching a star score measure for themselves.
So I know she has more size, but you think that if you discard the test, that the epiphanies and the aha moments that were gained were constructive? They could say, well, all right, here's ways we can improve our instruction. Forget the test. Here's ways we can improve our instruction as a result of what this told us. Is that fair to say?
It's a lot in a box. I think, when you look at the directors, you know, they have it's a mixed bag. There are things certainly they could have told you already, without the test, probably some of those things needed to improve. Maybe you wouldn't have pushed us as hard to get there, but we have other means of diagnosing who's on level, who's making progress, but they're having to meet it in the way the STAR test does. So we're having to make sure, we call it the doctrine of no surprises, that we can teach them so well that no matter how it comes up on the test, they're able to accomplish it and work with it and think through it. And that's a good thing, that we teach our kids to be independent in that way and be able to wrestle with hard problems and accomplish them on the test.
So overall, I don't know that there's any, you know, great revelations of those numbers where, as we drill down farther into it, I think sometimes when it comes to the individual campuses or a grade level and some instruction there and the quality of where that is, there's some things that become apparent there, and we use that data. Not only this data, but we're collecting data on a regular basis about how we make decisions about ensuring we've got quality instruction going on. And so that's been an ongoing deal. I don't know that all happens in these numbers to be able to.
But it bubbles up to it, right?
But it does bubble up to it, you're right, correct.
So that's
Yes.
constructive if.
It is,
you can drill down to the
and not only is
bottom.
it constructive about what we do, how it affects what we do day in, day out in the classroom, but also the way those principals and our directors focus in on, okay, beyond what that time we have within that classroom, when we want to do that extra work with a group of kids or an individual kids, or which ones are we having to target? And I think one of the ahas, like Anita said, was that it's not just any longer the group of kids we're trying to get to that minimal standards. It becomes all those, we can find gains in our kids that we push up in the master's group. And so we have to look across the spectrum. And I think a lot of our teachers came away with the aha that those kids count as much as some, and we should have known that. I think it just, when we're really having to analyze and look at this data, we're going, wow, we could have got, well, that individual kid, he could have scored over here. That would have produced these
2 more
additional
questions
points.
for Ed,
We
right?
could have done more with those kids in that group, but maybe we focused too much on it. So it has caused us to look at across the board all of our kids, and it's which is a good thing. I mean, it's a good part of this the system. There's still, like any system you put together that eventually creates numbers and whatever, there's going to be some sort of places it rubs and you wish it wasn't set up that way, and we have to just because, I mean, at the end of the day, if we took our raw numbers without any of the adjustments to the D schools, there's probably enough in there that we scored collectively enough for an A district.
If we got the graduation rate and less the penalties, yeah, we're bumping it, having the A. And so knowing those things, that makes a difference for us. And how do we, you know, now the graduation rate's a lagging indicator. It's already haze in the barn. You know, we can't but we can know what we know moving forward to be sure that we try to work on that, but a 10th of points can be the whole difference maker there, and, you know, that's kind of hard to predict. So, yes.
I had 2 questions on Domain 1. I know our graduation rate is very high. Can you remind me, because I've forgotten, state of Texas, what the average graduation rate is? About?
That number, let's see, Dr. Garza, you have that one in your head. He studies those high school scores a lot. It's lower 90s, certainly. It's not anywhere near this.
Our graduation rates are very high. And then on the college and career readiness, I think 2 on that we're considered high. Do we know how we compare to state of Texas on that?
No, in general, that one we did very well. We put some measures. That was one of the things we knew was coming in the system. And we put some measures in place, for instance, putting in college prep English and math for students who don't yet pass the TSI to go into dual credit classes. We put that in early, and then we're kind of getting our system to, you know, have the whole philosophy and understand it. So, yeah, our goal is that we get 100 in that score, because that's one that we can directly influence through, you know, motivation, getting kids in the right seats, helping prepare them for SAT, ACT, and doing well on advanced courses, that's one that we can move, and we feel like that is, it's for last year's graduates that will show up next year, but we expect that to be in the high 80s next year as far as the actual raw score, which will put it even higher there in student achievement.
And that college and career readiness is a percent of graduating class?
No, the way they do that, they have, for instance, 8 indicators. And as long as the kid gets one of them, for instance, I make a certain college level score on the SAT. I have a check now and good for me.
Or the military?
Another student doesn't have a check in those boxes, but he's gonna join the military. So another student is working on his welding certification, so he gets a check in the box. So we're actively monitoring all kids, and the goal is all graduates have a check in the box before they graduate at both high schools and at Alva as well.
So if it's not 100%, it's gotta be darn close to 100% for the
That's-
graduating class.
That's what our goal is now, that we can actually get every student there is, remains to be seen, but that is definitely the goal, and every kid is being tracked on a regular basis to be sure that we put a measure in place, put those tests in front of them, prepare them for the TSI, taking care of those. Okay. Want to move on? Okay. All right, so when we look around the state, this is kind of answers your question, Chuck, kind of where's the bell curve also. If you look at districts, you can see primarily it's around that B level that districts fell, and then it kind of sorts out after that. You see there are not many F districts, and that was not their intent to, I think really, I don't think they wanted to show a lot of F districts, but if they really were performing at that level, they wanted to help identify and help them to get better. When we look at campuses around the state, you'll see it's not as many A's and not as many B's. It falls more back into the C category. And then there's more campuses that are identified at that D and F level. So if we go on and look at Magnolia ISD, you'll see here are the grades for each campus this year in our first baseline year. And we have a couple that were a surprise to us, as you can imagine, that had not been anticipated. But almost half of ours have a B. Magnolia High and Bear Ridge Junior High are at 89 and leaning forward. And I think both were very disappointed not to have that A this year. Magnolia Junior High was as well. It was like 79 point something moving into that B zone. So we know kind of where every school is, and we've worked with them individually on having the plan that works for them moving up. I think it's important to note that one of the reasons that we had a little bit of a surprise, even though we had done our best, you can't predict all the indicators in doing that, but the shift that we made structurally, moving 5th graders to the intermediate school, I think you know the last few years, one of our focus areas has been our student achievement in 3rd and 4th grades, our younger children being able to meet those marks. That's been a focus area. Well, 5th graders are a little more mature, and they have the retest opportunities in reading and math. So that their number is higher on their student achievement typically because they have the extra opportunities that count for them to get the passing standards. And so with those scores moved out of the elementary, it's put all of the rating on the 3rd and 4th grades. Last year, anything that we looked at, we had some that were ready to move forward to make an A with the 5th graders included. And we tried to give them a mock look to the best degree that we could, what an elementary would look like without 5th grade. But I think this is kind of the resettling of the dust here, and now they know, I think, more what that's going to take to move them forward. It puts a lot of the burden and the accountability because of growth on the 4th grade, because that's, 3rd grade doesn't have growth because they've never taken a test before. 4th grade has the growth measure. So it puts a bulk of the accountability. They have 3 tests, and they have the growth for reading and math that count in the accountability system. So they're learning about that, and we have a lot of support from these people on supporting our teachers at the elementary and some good plans for moving forward with that. Okay, so let's look at some good news. Distinction designations, you know, we look at these are the gold star achievements. When we compare to 40 other schools that they're taken and put in a group just like them, how do they compare? Not compared to the state, not sliced in the accountability system, but just side by side, line by line with other schools like them. They can earn distinction in all the core content, they can earn it in growth, and closing the gaps, and in post-secondary readiness. And so if you look, we increased our number of schools this year. We had 5 schools last year that earned gold stars, and this year we had 8 that earned gold stars in a particular area. And that means they are reaching top level performance, their highest level of performance. That number of kids that they're getting to that master's level is outperforming other schools that are like theirs. And so we were really proud to see that. Magnolia West had 4 last year, and it expanded to 5 this year. Magnolia High School had not had any previously and earned some as well. And then even our elementaries, you'll see, earned some gold stars even as they were working within that new accountability system. So I was glad to highlight that as well. Okay, so as a result of the accountability system, we had to, there are schools that are identified specifically for targeted improvement planning. And I want you to know, we go through this every year. It's not like a new process that we look at our scores and try to make an improvement plan. That's ongoing, and every campus is doing that and has plans already in place. But the state accountability system requires some specific interventions for campuses to go through to work toward improvement. And so I'm going to tell you about both of those things just a little bit as we move forward. So as far as district initiatives go, things that we were already doing but that support what we're doing in the accountability system, this is the 2nd year of our working with it's the rigor and relevance framework, and how we help teachers have a really solid understanding of higher level work, higher level achievement, what that looks like when the kids are actually doing it, and really working with our principals and the teachers for having a vision for what that looks like. And you may remember Bloom's taxonomy from college when you get up to higher levels, evaluation, synthesis, and helping the teachers use that on a regular basis and be very intentional about it. We also currently are working on what I call a refresh on professional learning communities, and it's kind of a buzz term in education world when it's really nothing mystical except it's teachers getting together in the room and planning the best stuff that they can do together, and then checking it to see if it worked, and if it didn't, how do we get better, and but it really makes that a focus and an ongoing process. And we've allotted time for that at all of our campuses so that they can sit together. The veteran teachers can help the teachers who are newbies, and they can take common tests, see how that's rolling, how do we adjust, and how do we keep getting better. And so we had training this summer, and it's ongoing. Dr. Garza's leading a lot of that right now with our principals, helping them have a vision of making a school that is a professional learning community. And so we're building that to be strong in our system as we're working for this improvement. They're watching student work on a regular basis. And then finally, we spent a lot of time this summer on resource allocation and moving some things, trying to leverage things so that we could count on things, particularly at the elementary level, to make some improvements. We took our Title I funds and did a redistribution. Those were allotted to, we had 4 that were called school-wide schools that could serve, because their low socioeconomic population qualified them to just serve the whole school and get federal funds that would support them in closing gaps. We've been able to take some of that funding and move it to a couple of other schools, particularly Magnolia Parkway and Magnolia Intermediate, to give them some funds for targeted groups. They don't use it to help run the whole school, but if their English language learners are needing more support, it's given them additional funds to be able to, and both of them are using that, particularly for those and for identify those as economic students who need to move forward. That's been a big help to them to have that funding this year. It also allowed us at those schools and the other Title I schools to add a position. We've added reading interventionists because we saw a need for that extra reading support on a regular basis, and we've scheduled time in the school day every day for those kids up through 5th grade for them to have dedicated time that wasn't pulled from another class to be able to get the reading support that they need from a high-quality professional that's trained in reading programs and helping the kids. So those were something we were really happy to bring about. We also have new K through 8 ELAR materials. It was a new adoption. We also have new TEKS that the teachers are learning. I was in the room with them today, being very grateful for a day to spend some time learning that. It's new standards, will cause some new things on the test, but they are working on that. We also have, we're working on a blended learning approach, and this is something our commissioners for, using computer programs and the analytics that we can get from that to help kids keep on track in learning, and we use the data to help us have information. Susie Johnson and Mark Pietka in the math program wrote a grant this past year called Math Innovation Zones, and it secured us between $200,000 and $300,000 for getting devices and some of the software that we'll be using over the next couple of years to be able to support that. And then we've also used some of those Title I funds to, both programs are using a company, Imagine Learning, that they're able to help the kids have that additional support in addition to the teacher. So it's more individualized for them as well. But the teacher can use the reporting to know if the kids are staying on track. And then finally, we do have Thank the Content Directors Night. They are tired and they've been with teachers all day long today, but they are ongoing. We've been really dedicated to setting up a calendar that has PD days at the beginning of each 9 weeks so they can study ahead, they can work together, be prepared, be in the room with the director, and have a really solid understanding about what's coming next. We've trained teacher team facilitators at every grade level team across the district, and they're working with them on a regular basis, and we have instructional coaches who are working with our teachers. So as a district, that's kind of all a refocused effort on making those improvements that we want to see on that first chart that we looked at. And then beyond that, so we have all that already going, but then we've had to shift with those schools that are identified for improvement. And the state has provided a training in a new program they've put together based on research called the Effective Schools Framework. And they've identified 5 areas, they call them levers, that schools, effective schools, they do these things and they do them well. And they've pulled it all from research and kind of lined that out. And they say, of course, one of the first things you have to have circling that whole wagon is strong leadership. And we believe that's important too, and invest in our principals quite a bit in helping them to grow and develop. Then that instructional core is effective instruction. It's got to be good every day. And the way to get to that is having a high quality curriculum, having a positive school culture that's about kids learning and about making sure it's safe and secure and everybody can get down to work. And then of course, effective, well-supported teachers, that are paid well and treated well and want to come to work and do that good job every day. So each of the schools that were identified that either had a D or a D in a particular domain, we went to training at Region 6 and they had to go through a self-evaluation process based on the components of this framework and then identify how they were going to work, like 1 or 2 of those areas that they wanted to work on as far as an improvement plan. And honestly, that's been a good process. That's what the state's requiring. It's not, you've got to improve 10 percentage points in this particular thing. They're asking schools that didn't make the mark to really do a reflection process and see how can we get better and do the things that good schools do. And so honestly, that has not been a bad process. It was cumbersome to get it all done in a short amount of time, and we wanted to get it finished so we could get on with the plan. But they've enjoyed the process, and many of them began some of the activities with their staff today to be able to push that plan moving forward and do things good schools do. So if we look at, we did submit to you for approval each of the campus TIP plans, targeted improvement plans, and that is on the agenda for approval later tonight. And so I just was going to run through those. It's kind of some of the things that they looked at, and I have a new hat that I wear under the system. It's called the District Coordinator of School Improvement. And so my job is to work with each of these schools, making sure they have the tools that are needed and the district support to follow through with their plan. And so I know all this stuff really well with the principals, but LSER specifically decided they wanted to revisit their campus mission, their values, their goals, what drives us to be great, and they started that process today and had a really good day looking at that and getting some plans in place for what they want to push forward with. And then there, almost all the schools, of course, picked that core effective instruction. They feel like we have the curriculum components. They feel like they have good teachers in place for the most part and ready to go do that. And we're supporting some that are needing improvement. But they really wanted to work on that lesson planning and watching the data and making sure that, that their kids are moving. And those are the processes we'd already put in place. But they're learning to focus on that. And then MES kind of has the same vision. Let's start back at the beginning. Who are we and how are we going to be great? And they're working on that as part of their internal structure and effective instruction. Now, Alpha was a little bit different. That was one that was certainly a surprise to us. And we had to learn a lot about what's different about their accountability system. And it comes down to it's not about star performance there. It's really about the graduation rate. And so they're working on just kind of reframing their campus culture and doing some things moving forward there. Magnolia Parkway, kind of same thing as the others, revisiting the vision and instruction. And then Williams is kind of already done that part before, so they're just really taking the time to focus on how are we going to get effective instruction every day. And finally, Magnolia Intermediate, same thing. So there's a list of resources where all this stuff came from, but I know it was very thorough, and I know there's probably a lot more we can talk about in doing that, but I don't want to think that a test defines all of our work, because we have huge successes in our academic area all the time. And I don't want that to get lost in the conversation. I've gotten to do a lot of parent meetings on campuses with the schools that you just saw. And there's a gigantic amount of support out there for their local school and what is happening with their kids. And most of them say, how can we help? We don't want it to become a political information. We want our kids to learn and we want to support it. And that's been great for me to see, is the level of support. So I can assure you, we're going to learn from it. I know these people will nod their heads, as like I say, they have a very tired day because this was their work today and tomorrow and the next day. And they're out there beating the trail to make sure everybody's equipped as much as possible to meet these goals. So thank you so much for listening.
No, for all of this new accountability stuff, when the targets were not targets, we were just told they were going to be targets. And you, I know at that point, were already setting up a lot of these things that you have said are striving toward those goals. And the education community is quite goal-oriented. So you know, just like when a new coach takes over a program and says, my guys bought in and they're all on board, it has to be motivating to them to see now that, oh, these lesson planning groups are gonna help us get over the mark on this. So thanks for doing the legwork ahead of time before we even knew
Well,
what the targets were.
That's a whole team. I give a lot of credit to that team. They study it, they want to win as much as anybody I've ever seen, and, you know, and are putting that effort towards supporting the teachers.
But isn't it great that they just set up a plan that would actually teach children, and now it's helping
Yes.
with this
And so
stuff?
we do expect to see things move forward this year. We certainly do. We'll have some checkpoints along the way. Anything else?
Well, I know, I don't want to speak for the rest of the group up here, but I think we're your biggest fans in this whole thing, and I don't think our life needs to revolve around a test or a number, for sure. I think it is disappointing that, I mean, it looks like we're not in the top quartile.
Right.
by
That's
just about any
disappointing to us
definition.
too, yes.
And so, one question would be, not making this an obsession, but how long would it take for us to get there? Meaning, or did you find things that you could easily improve to make a big
Kind
impact?
of
Or
low
is it,
hanging fruit.
is it, yeah,
kind of
exactly,
thing.
or is this gonna be a long, drawn-out thing? How quickly can we get to the,
It's
to the?
both. Yes, we found the things that we think we can leverage most quickly, and that's where we put our first effort, but we know it's really a long haul to move that student achievement number at all 3 levels of performance. We've seen some areas really take off. We focused on master's level performance last year, and you saw from the gold stars that made a big difference. It just is so spread out of a system that it's hard to move all of them at the same time. But because they have the best of system, you know, it picks the best number. If you move one, you can get your grade to move pretty quickly while you're trying to keep the whole system moving forward. So that's, I know that may seem like a convoluted answer, but yes, both. We're trying to move quickly and steady.
Cause it'd sure be good to find some quick wins, or easy wins, I should say. Well, and quick too, you know, I know it's a lot harder.
At the end of the day, it's all about providing great instruction, and that's what this team back there is about, helping support, and I know they go out there every day. and
Top
work with
quality people right
our
there.
principals to monitor it, and these folks to work with those teachers to model it, and also make sure that we set an expectation of what we want taught, how we want it taught in the classrooms, and our principals have to come back and monitor that. So we've got a good thing in place, we've got a great team of people there in place that hold high expectations. But as Dr. Hebert, it is a big system, and there's a lot of people involved in it, a lot of moving parts, and sometimes we have to get everybody on board for high quality instruction every day for all those kids and move them as far as they're capable of doing. And I think we have a system that is organized to do that, has a belief system that we can do it. We just have to make sure we work out some of the kinks in some of the gears and get it moving at a high performing rate, which I think the system is intended for us to do. Eventually, we can provide every child with the level of instruction that moves them to the highest of their capabilities for that particular kid on campus.
And I know we're more on the cultural side, you're more on the proficiency side, but, you know, the one thing I'd like to say is let's just not forget. I'm glad we have that test, that's wonderful, but our goal is to teach those kids. So, I mean, I'm glad we're accelerating the scores, I'm glad we're doing all that, but at the end of the day, you know, that child's gonna graduate from our district. And how good of a job did we do making that person ready to move on and do what they do? I just think that's, and I have no idea how you truly evaluate that. And I applaud to a degree them trying to. I'm not saying I agree with their test. I probably on many levels don't agree with some of the things we're being tested on. So I would just ask, let's not lose the focus that our goal is just to do the best for each one of those kids, the best we can do.
And I would hope the constructive things to come out of this would help us with that. That way it's not such an obsession with the
And
test.
that's
It's
what-
like, oh,
yeah.
here's how we can make the instruction better. Forget this. We can take the feedback from this and make our instruction better, and then the test will take care of itself.
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
really our focus when and I applaud the state state, for the process they set up, they didn't put it on numbers on the test for schools in need of improvement. They put on the things that make schools that take care of kids in a great way. That's what they do, and they gave us those set of indicators. And we had a lot of them we got in line, but we had some that we go, you know, we can get better at that. And that should help us do exactly what you said.
And it's a beautiful thing to not have a 60% graduation rate where you
Yes.
go, oh, we need some growth there. It's nice. That's the first step we do right.
Well, we can't tell you how much we appreciate your support always, and remembering that they are people, they're students, and we want to grow them up to be great citizens, and that is our focus, and we appreciate your support all the time. Okay, I'm ready to pass the mic, I can assure you. We do have our bilingual update, and that's some good news. So, pass it on.
I believe that's next. So every year we are required, whether we like it or not, but we have come to enjoy this report. And Ms. Nancy Rodriguez is going to take us through our bilingual assessment report for the state of the district. And so, Nancy, you have our attention.
Don't you like this podium here instead of over there?
Sure. Well, thank you for the opportunity for me to present. I'm very honored to be in this position and bringing things to the bilingual program and ESL program in Magnolia that will help our children grow as second language learners. So this is just a short view of our English learners in Magnolia ISD. So last year I presented the information about our total English learners, and it was about 1,785 students. And then, of course, Spanish is our majority language. And then those are the language representations that we have. And as you notice, the last point is other languages, and there's 10. So this year I was like, let me just put them all out there. And this is everyone. Our numbers have gone up. So we are over the 2,000 mark. And Spanish, of course, still is our minority language. And then look at all those languages. Of course, we only have like a couple of Chinese and a couple of Polish and so on, but it's getting quite diverse, and it's beautiful. So those are our English learners in Magnolia. As far as English proficiency, again, it goes back to a test that is all about growth for these kiddos. So we have the TELPAS system, and I separated them. So this is kindergarten and second grade. So language proficiency is acquired. You begin with your social language. If we remember, I mean, we might not, when we were 2, 3 years old and we were learning to say phrases in our first language, this is our kids in 2 and 3 years learning their second language. So as you can see, there's more kids at beginning level, and then it goes down, but these are our babies, these are our little ones. And this is the better chart of grades 3 through 12, where the beginners, we have some, of course we have lots of newcomers coming in, well not lots, but we have newcomers coming in that make up a large percentage of that beginning level bar, and then it goes up. And so the bar that we are targeting is at advanced high. With our long-term English learners, many of these children have been in our schools since pre-K kindergarten, and they just need a little bit of a push to get to that advanced high level where they are performing comparably to their monolingual peers. So we have lots of emphasis on within our rigor and relevance rubric as well of the academic discussions. So making them accountable for using that academic terminology when they're producing the language, whether it's by speaking or writing. And then academic progress. These graphs look great to me as well. There's growth. So the maroon or red color, that was last year. And then the gold is this year. So we see growth across the approaches, meets, and masters. Of course, English 1 and 2, they did grow in approaches and meets, but it's at master's level that we will continue to work on. We'll continue to work on all of them, of course. course. But that is definitely an area to work on. So this is the academic progress. And then in professional development, we have continued to bring in our teachers, and they're very excited. Bilingual teachers come in during the summer because I am over the summer school program, and so our days off are Friday, but that's our PD days. And they are there, and they're very excited to receive the support. So we also have bilingual coaches at Lyon Elementary. These are bilingual campuses, Magnolia, Magnolia Parkway, Smith, and Williams. And we continue to work on the recruitment of highly qualified teachers, thanks to our HR department, who lets me know when the career, I'm sorry, I was gonna say career day, but the career fairs are coming up. I'm out there recruiting, and we just go all over the area and try to get them. My first year I went out to the Valley, and they weren't quite coming up here to join us. I tried, but they want to stay with family. So I'm going out to A&M on the 5th of November and trying to recruit some December graduates as well. We have added 4th grade teachers, bilingual teachers at all of our elementary schools, which I appreciate. Our principals aren't here, but I have given them, lots of, thank you so much. We really need that support at 4th grade, and we continue to search for highly qualified teachers in the higher levels. We also are continuing the study of biliteracy techniques, which requires knowing what transfers from the native language of Spanish to English. Some things are very easily transferred, cognates, words that are very similar, and I'm just continuing to provide teachers with that professional development, and also studying the cross-content connections. The more we can make connections between reading, language arts, and math, science, social studies, and language arts, the better for the children. In the ESL world, we have a new person on the team. It's Katie Mitchell, and she's in the back. And she is our secondary EL specialist. So she is out there from 5th grade to 12th grade working with teachers. There's a specific group of teachers, the EL cohorts, and those are made up of the students that on the data that I showed earlier, the TELPAS results. They have scored beginning and intermediate, and of course the newcomers that haven't yet tested. So she was working closely with those teachers, and what do they need to acquire English and the content level, which is amazing that our standards are written to require our children who are coming in without any English to perform alike their peers. Not to the exact level, but they have to use a lot of the grammar and all of that. So it's very interesting, but we're working on it. So she's working with them, and I'm very, very grateful to be able to have her in the secondary grades. Also in district workshops and coaching that focus on sheltered instruction and best practices. We have a consultant coming in, and she helps us focus our instruction on those areas, language output opportunities, making them accountable for what they should be sounding like in every content area. And then that picture at the bottom is one of those Friday summer sessions with a lot of our bilingual teachers that were there, very happily receiving the information. And that is what I have for you today as far as our bilingual and ESL programs in Magnolia ISD.
Nancy, do we see, in terms of those with the second language that are other than Spanish, are the majority of those, are we serving some of the, we see in a bilingual program, or most of those wind up being in secondary, the ESL program?
Those are in the ESL program. They are. We're not quite yet to having the numbers in those programs to require, like our neighbors in Houston that have Mandarin bilingual programs. We're not there yet.
Okay.
That's quite a jump from last year to this year.
Yes,
Wow.
it is.
We are changing.
And we tend to see lots of families coming in through Florida, then they make their way to Texas, because I guess they hear that Texas is a place to be. But a lot of them are coming from Venezuela, and they're highly educated, but they just don't have the language yet, so they catch on pretty quickly.
That's great.
Very good.
Nice.
She does a good job.
Thank
Proud.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you for your support.
thank you very
Thank
much.
You might be noticing that Dr. Bullock is now coming to the podium here.
Is he on deck next? I
He's
think
on
that's-
deck
I think
right
that's
now.
on our notes
He
here.
is, he's stepping up to the plate. We wanted to do a little safety update with some of the initiatives that we continue to study and look at as far as making sure we provide safe campus structures for, and so Dr. Bullock's going to take you through some of those things that we are looking at that will happen in the future for this current year. So,
Good evening, how are you guys? Good. I want to go over a couple of initiatives that we've been working on this school year in particular in regards to student safety and safety on our campuses. You know, guys, safety is something that is always at the forefront in this day and age. We're having constant conversations about this kind of thing and always looking for what the next thing is that we need to do to keep our kids as safe as possible because, you know, we know that for kids to be able to learn, they have to feel safe, first and foremost. So this is one of the most important things we do. A couple of things I wanted to call your attention to is, first of all, training that we complete. Last school year, if you guys will remember, we started working with a company called ARC Training, which stands for Aware, Ready, and Capable. And the head trainer is Jeff Hine, who has a lot of years of law enforcement and security experience under his belt. And Jeff started working with our schools last year. We trained every campus in the district with a pretty lengthy training for how to respond to intruders and active shooters. This year, you know, one of the challenges is once you start a large training initiative, it's how to stay current with it because you're constantly hiring new people are leaving. So we did a refresher course, a 45-minute refresher course for each campus. There was one actually held here this morning for staff not based on e-campus. And then we completed the full length course back in August for all of our new hires who are coming into the district. We've made the course available for substitute teachers so that they are also aware. But we feel, and our principals have given us feedback that they greatly appreciate it. It gives them some peace of mind to have a plan and other teachers are trained. But we appreciate the work that Jeff does with the district. We have also used him in his role as a security consultant to us on numerous things. Starting this year, Ms. McKinney has been working with him to schedule drills on each campus where Jeff comes and observes the drills in real time. And we inform parents up front that morning, okay, there's gonna be a drill in your building so that we don't, you know, scare everybody. But, you know, we do need to drill and practice. So Jeff has come and observed those drills, working with the campus, the constables who are based on each campus. And then they meet along with Ms. McKinney with the campus principal after those drills to give feedback and points of ways we can improve. So we feel that's been a good thing. We've incorporated those in along with fire drills so that we aren't just interrupting instruction too much. You know, we're required to have a fire drill once a month. And so we found that we can incorporate some of these intruder drills into the fire drills. And, you know, sometimes we get to, I guess, practice these things for real, at least the weather events, right? Last week we had tornado warnings in the area. So I was really proud of our campuses on the east side of the district that very quickly went into shelter in place until they got the all clear. And, you know, that's a result of our training as well. So, you know, this is what we're doing to keep our campuses and our teachers ready for events that we hope never happen. Any questions on the safety training? Okay. Next thing I want to talk to you about is emergency planning. This is, I can show you, this is an initiative this year for the first time. Up until this year, our emergency plans have been in binders and in flip charts, which means that they get out of date fairly soon. And, you know, when an emergency happens, the last thing you want to do is be searching for the emergency binder to know what to do. Well, everybody carries one of these with them these days. So I can show you, that's what it looks like on my phone. It's a downloadable app. This is customized to our district. And I put a couple of screenshots up there for you guys to see. We can edit and update the information in here for any number of scenarios. And then we've required campus-based staff to download this app onto their phone, which means they have the latest version. If if we're in some emergency situation and there's no internet access, the whole manual's there on the phone because they've downloaded the app. If they do have internet service, it automatically gives them the latest updated version. So we feel it's a great way that we don't have to search for emergency plans. It's easy to follow. You can click from screen to screen. And what's more is it'll save us some money too. It ends up being cheaper in the long haul. As we re-up with this in the future year to year than it does to print emergency guides, on a regular basis like we were doing in the past. So, we think this is pretty forward thinking and and a good way to get these plans in the hands of our staff members. So, any questions on the emergency plan? Okay, and this is also something that Jeff Hine has helped us and has looked these things over and offers us some suggestions for improvement with his security background. The next thing I want to talk to you about are some facility initiatives, and this may be where you have questions. We, over the last several years, have built vestibules in our elementaries. We've closed off an area at Bear Branch Junior High. We have a couple of buildings that are kind of the last ones for us to get to, partly because it's challenging to figure out how to work the entrances of those buildings. Under House Bill 3, there was a school safety allotment created. In the wisdom of the state, they decided the school safety allotment, I think the number Eric gave me today, was $9.72 per student. Don't ask me how or why that's the number we came up with, but $9.72 per student means roughly $125,000 for Magnolia ISD. So we're going to spend some of that money to update the entrances to our two high schools as well as Magnolia Junior High. And I want to show you this. I put one of the plans up there, and guys, this was determined from meeting Mr. Stewart and Tim Bruner and I met with high school administrations and went through their concerns with security and what they thought would solve the problems we were trying to solve, as well as not impeding traffic flow too terribly much. So if you're thinking Magnolia West, it's just the flip of the floor plan, but the premise is the same. So this is Mag High on the drawing, and we will put a storefront in across at those pillars right there before the entrance to the library. So what that does is it creates a secure area from the front doors right inside that main lobby. If you notice on the right side going into reception, that wall's going to be widened and we'll have a drop-down gate there, but it'll feel more like one big lobby going into the reception area. And then the reception desk will be able to command the doors at the top end of that security vestibule with a buzzer. And so once someone comes and checks in and shows a driver's license, if they need access, they can buzz them in at that point. People will be able to get to the attendance office. There's a window there, and then we'll have a door. And I think we've already put that door in at Magnolia West that separates the lobby from just a clean access down the hallway to the administrative offices. So what this does for us is it allows us during passing times or when kids are leaving the building, there's panic bars on the back of those doors, so those doors can all open and kids can still come in and out. We can open those doors at the beginning of school and at the end of school, but then during the day it lets us have a truly secured area to verify people before they're able to go any further in the building at both high schools. Any question about how that works?
When is that proposed for?
It's a great question. Hope to do the work over Christmas and would hope to be finished with it by January. Okay, now let me show you Magnolia Junior High. It looks a little different. A different floor plan, right? And some of the challenges we face, that hallway there on the side going right next to the attendance window, it's not as clean and simple as this. So we have a creative solution. I give you a new Magnolia Junior High front entrance. If you'll notice what's different, right now there are 3 banks of doors on the front of the building, and what is there is basically a bank window, is probably the best analogy. Yes, sir. With thicker glass and access drawer where people can slide an ID in and they can be checked, but then from that point, you can control the other 2 doors with a buzzer. So it means people would have to stand outside until they're cleared to enter, but with the way that lobby's set up and as much of the student body that passes right by there every single passing period, the options were limited, but we believe this would do what we're trying to accomplish, which is to have secure entrances at the front of these 3 schools. This one, to anticipate your question, Ms. Evil, we're on a little bit slower timetable, and talking with Mr. Bruner, we believe that we'll have to get permits with the city because we're dealing with egress of the building. We have the same number of doors in and out of the high schools on this, but since this will take away the center doors, we need to have this permitted through through the city and all those folks to make sure from building codes that we're okay. And then, and then ordering the window system. We have a company selected that we think, would provide us what we need, but, we're a little bit beholden to timetables on the permit and when equipment can get here.
Does that window system kind of translate into the doors also? I mean, the glass in the doors? Is that,
Ask that again.
the doors that are, the glass that's in those doors?
Mhm.
If I break that glass, do I go through the door?
If you, right now, if you reach around, it's got a panic bar on the back of it. Yes, sir, it does. Which is the same with the doors at the high schools.
Sure.
You put laminated glass in them and you won't go through it, or it'll be ugly when you do, like a car windshield.
Right.
Because that's what we put in my dad's pharmacy.
That would probably solve some things. Yes, sir. So, other questions about the facility upgrades?
So there's no change to the inside on this one, right?
No, sir.
It's just an external thing.
That's right, it's just
And then-
external.
and
And
then
then there
the-
would be power run to that so that we could, so that the buzzer could operate, and there would be a security guard sitting there at that window at the junior high.
Watch class changes right here. This is a major thoroughfare right up there. Those-
Major highway at
So
this
that,
school.
we're trying to figure out some way to,
Yeah.
control access without interrupting student flow in there. So this is a real creative way to do that.
Mhm.
And
Neat
I
idea.
think you could probably buy movie tickets there. So,
And I guess at the high schools, it's only gonna go up, what, 8 feet or something? I mean, because I know that a whole lot.
It won't
goes up
go to
2,
the
4,
store. It'll be
It won't go all the way up.
across there, however, whatever that is, 8 and a half, whatever. Tim's giving me 10 feet. Thank you, Tim. The signal for 10.
10 feet.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank y'all, good work on that. That committee regularly meets, looks at things, and we've got some other initiatives that we're out there still brainstorming about, and we'll kind of keep moving through some of those, but these are the ones we feel like we need to move with right now, and so I think they'll make a big difference for us.
Well, given we've done all the elementary schools, I mean, given the newer schools, I mean, there's nothing else left but these 3, right? The 2 high schools.
I think there's still some things that our
For entrances.
constables that are in our buildings that are regular places, and some of them will come to us and say, there's probably some other things we could look at, and we're still taking time to process those and determine, okay, what's gonna become the new standard? We don't try to piecemeal these things individually. We wanna look at a standard across the district, and yes, this will bring us to a certain standard sort of across the board. There are some other bars we may have to have some talks about later on, and we'll continue those conversations. But this is gonna kind of bring us up to one level of standards, that when you come to a campus, you don't just walk onto that campus without someone vetting you in a certain place.
And that'll be true with any campus
And
now.
with all
Right.
campuses, correct. I think Alpha is a little bit of
6A,
an
I was
anomaly.
gonna ask
We're
about
we're
Alpha.
working on some things with Alpha, but we've got a plan for how we can address that too, so. We didn't bring you that one, it's a little bit simpler, we got a couple of ideas on some of it, but that would complete that, envelope sort of deal. We have a secure vestibule area. But there are some other things that we have on the list, we'll probably work through them, but that's where we are today, so. More to come.
So we got 125,000, is that gonna take all that, or?
Well, we also assume that, that we have the million so per year that we spend on our constables, so that will help offset a little bit of some of that. And that's gonna be, as we understand it, will be a reoccurring sort of cost we'll have it, so we'll continue to look at other creative things that we can do with those dollars, which we appreciate them putting that into the system and targeting them toward safety. So we're gonna use them that way.
good with that one?
I'm good.
All right. Moving on to our consent agenda. This portion of the agenda consists of items to be routine and will be enacted by one motion unless separate discussion is requested. So, is there any separate discussion requested? Okay, if there aren't any questions, then we need a motion that the board approve consent agenda items A through F. Motion by Christie, seconded by Chuck. All in favor? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay, this is our HGAC, Houston Galveston Area Council General Assembly. So the HGAC bylaws authorize each member of an independent school district to designate a delegate to the HGAC General Assembly. Delegates must be duly elected members of the school district's Board of Trustees. HGAC is a voluntary association of cities, counties, and special districts in the greater Houston area of southeast Texas. Last couple of years, Dr. Travis Moffitt has done this, and the alternate has been Kelly McDonald, who's not with us tonight, but it's now time for us to select a delegate and an alternate for this year. So, do we have any volunteers among the group?
I don't mind doing it again. I'd be happy to do it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And then an alternate, can we nominate somebody that's not here?
I'll nominate Kelly.
Kelly would love to.
Did she say
not
before she
complaining.
didn't come that
I'm surprised she didn't become
want
the
to be on?
delegate.
Travis, you wanna
Leave her
retake
out.
that?
Yeah, I'll be the alternate. There we go. I'll do it.
She needs to thank us when she sees us again, right? Okay, so we need a motion that the Magnolia ISD Board of Trustees approve to appoint Magnolia ISD Board Trustee Dr. Travis Moffitt as a representative and Kelly McDonald as an alternate to the Houston Galveston Area Council General Assembly, that's a mouthful, for the year 2019-2020. Motion by Christie, seconded by Joe. All in favor?
With all
This
the
is-
rights and privileges.
Okay, so
We need to probably get back to executive session, but other than that, it's been a good meeting without all the principals. And I want to thank our directors for their presence, and not only just for their presence, for all the great things they do for our district. We really appreciate them, and like Anita said, they've been busy today, most of them, directly working with teachers. It's a busy day, but we've got a tremendous group of talent in this group here, and we are so blessed that they call Magnolia home.
that's right.
And so,
Like we said earlier, we're your biggest fans, so thanks for being here.
so we got to figure out when that Magnolia ISD Directors Month is. Let them know.
It's a much rowdier crowd when the principals are here, I'm just saying. We're so nice and quiet.
All right, then, at this time,
The principals say every month is Directors Month. I just had to throw that in.
That's
Somebody,
right.
I think that was Dr. King that said that. So,
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Name names.
He's not here.
he's not here either.
Defend himself.
okay, going once, twice, three. At this time, the board will now recess to move into closed executive session for the purposes permitted by consultation with attorney pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071, discussion of purchase, sale, exchange, or value of real property pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.072, and personnel discussion pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.074. Thank you very much. You're all the last one to show up.
I think so. I only went because he went.
we're fine.
Bad example here.
Sometimes it's just,
You gotta do what you gotta.
all right, Rob's got us on.
All right, we need a motion to adjourn this meeting. Motion by Chuck, seconded by Travis, all in favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.